One of the most important things that we have to keep in mind if we're dealing with multiple agencies, state governments, federal governments, the companies, is what are the expectations, what are the roles and responsibilities. For example, on the recent accident with Antares out at Wallops, after the fact, there were a lot of folks that were looking at the documents very, very carefully to understand who really had the financial responsibility to pay for the damages and so forth. In this particular case, there were no federal requirements in terms of having insurance or making other plans for what to do in the event of an accident, but there is the responsibility, I think, for all the parties to work together and understand who's got the ball, who's got responsibility, what's going to happen in the event of a bad day. It's interesting to look at the different processes that are used for accidents for spaceflight. The way things are today, if we have a government-owned spacecraft that is lost, whether it be the space shuttle or the International Space Station, or if a NASA astronaut is killed on one of those missions, then there's a presidential commission that is set up to investigate what went wrong and what has to happen. And of course, that's exactly what we did after the Space Shuttle Challenger accident and after Columbia. At the FAA, we actually have a slightly different perspective on things. Congress has told us space transportation is inherently risky, and we very much agree with that. We recognize that there's going to be accidents in all modes of transportation, including space transportation. And so what we've done is to set up a memorandum of understanding with the FAA, the Air Force, and the National Transportation Safety Board, the NTSB, to decide who would lead the investigation after an accident. And if there is no damage to the general public, if there are no fatalities, we will typically invite the launch operator, the company, to conduct the investigation under FAA oversight. We invite the Air Force and NASA to participate as observers, but we put the responsibility on the company to determine what went wrong and then have the FAA review that to make sure we're satisfied before the next launch is allowed to take place. Now, in the case of a fatality or a serious injury to the public, then we would typically bring in the NTSB. In fact, they've had the lead for the investigation for the Spaceship Two accident that took place last October, and the FAA is one of the parties to that investigation. The mishap community is a close one. We try to work very closely together between the FAA and NASA and the Air Force, the NTSB. And one of the things we do to try to prepare, in addition to reviewing roles and responsibilities, is to have tabletop exercises. And somebody will come up with a scenario in terms of a potential accident, and then each of the players is asked to respond. Okay, what do we do? Who's in charge? What's the next step? And that's a good way to keep people on their toes and to anticipate the unexpected.